I've done a lot of marathons. Actually, I've done a lot of marathons and ultras and multi-day trail races. And I have to say, I have a tendency to tough it out if the race doesn't go to plan. In fact, I've only had one race that I can really remember where I had a DNF, did not finish. This was a 50K trail race called the Run for the Toad. And in fact, an event that coincidentally is also in today's book. So that will come up. Um, I was pushing for an age group podium and I was at about 30K mark and I felt a sharp pain in my right quad. After testing it for a few times, I decided to drop out. Um, I kind of made the decision because I had a trip to the Himalayas coming up in a couple of months and I really needed to be in good shape. So I decided, okay, it looks like today is my first ever DNF. I was completely bummed out at the time because it was the first time I'd ever done it, and you kind of don't like to be that guy. However, I read in today's book, in life lesson number 33, that we can reframe DNF as wisdom, not weakness. DNF can also be an acronym for did nothing foolish, making a smart choice rather than being embarrassed or shamed. Hi, and welcome to Running Book Reviews podcast, where we review books written for runners, about runners, and by runners to help you decide if you'd like to read the book for yourself. We also hope that listening to us chat about running can help keep you motivated about your own running, or maybe inspire you to try something new. My name is Alan, and with my co-host Cheyenne, we're going to talk today with author Jochen about his book, One Step Forward, 100 Life Lessons from 100 Marathons.
In One Step Forward, we follow Gene from his initially unhealthy lifestyle as he transforms from sedentary starter to 11-time Ironman finisher with a 10-year Boston Marathon streak along the way. During his journey, Gene extracts over 100 life lessons from his running, but is applicable to all kinds of situations. They fall into 5 major categories: perseverance and resilience, mental strength and self-talk, community and support, personal growth and transformation, and lastly, service and giving back. About Gene Jochen, Gene is an endurance athlete who has completed over 100 marathons, including his 11th Boston in 2022. And he has finished all 6 Abbott World Marathons, plus 11 Ironmans, as if it wasn't enough. A corporate leader, sales expert, and entrepreneur, he sharpened his mindset testing limits on roads, trails, and triathlons. He shares hard-earned insights to help others conquer doubt, build resilience, break personal barriers, and he also likes to be a songwriter and jazz rock drummer too, which I find is really cool.
Multifaceted.
Multifaceted. Always looking for a new edge. I love it. So, Gene, welcome.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. It's really tough to be a type A person. I've got a lot of crosses to bear.
Do you get excited along the way, picking up different ones?
I do. You know what? I just try to squeeze every inch out of life, and so that's why I juggle a lot of balls, and I'm never going to change. That's just who I am.
I love that. And how was writing a book itself as one of those crosses to bear?
That was a labor of love. I started my book probably 5 or 6 years ago when I did finish my 100th marathon. I had the concept of writing a book about my journey. It evolved into the 100 life lessons because I always felt after every distance, every marathon or ultra marathon I ran, I learned something. It taught me something about myself. Every run teaches me something about myself, and so I was able to I kept good records, and I chronologically wrote the book from marathon 1 to 100, and I had the writer's block at about marathon 60. I put it down for a while. I had a writing coach who was kicking me in the butt, trying to get me to finish, and she finally convinced me to pick it up. I did, and I finished writing it around January, and then I thought that was the hardest part. The second hardest part was actually getting it published. And if anybody is a published author out there, getting it up onto the different platforms, that's a whole nother lift.
Yeah.
And then the third now is the marketing and trying to, get the book into out to people and let people enjoy the book and learn from it as well. So it's sort of, multi-step. Now I look back and I'm like, the writing was probably the fun part, the easiest part. And not that this is harder, but this is certainly a different labor of love.
Absolutely. And how were you able to go along the way and remember all those stories from each of those initial marathons from when you first started?
Well, I am a member of Marathon Maniacs. If anybody's familiar with that, I met the two of the three founders early on. I was in New Mexico running the Bataan Death March Marathon in New Mexico, and two of the founders were there, and I drank their Kool-Aid. I had qualified. I think I had to run 3 marathons in 3 months to qualify to become a marathon maniac. I'm number 312, and I think they have over 20,000 members. And they also have a half marathon maniac club as well. And one of the things about it was that, is that you actually record all of your marathons, of course, and a little bit of a blurb about each. And I have impeccable statistics on all my distance runs, pretty much all the runs that I've ever done, 5Ks, 10s, all of them. And, and then I also have not only being able to record it, I sort of have a bit of a photogenic memory when it comes to running marathons. I can, almost remember like, mile by mile and the weather that day and what happened and how I felt. I can't tell you what I had for breakfast yesterday, but ask me the weather of the Boston Marathon in 2012, and I remember it. It's something I don't know. It just seems to imprint, and I talk to a lot of runners that have that same ability, I guess, from running.
Well, you probably remember 2012 because it was the hottest one
That's right.
in living memory. Uh,
Exactly.
now you're talking to members of similar sorts of clubs and mentalities. Yeah,
Other obsessive, compulsive runners.
yeah. There you go. Yeah, I've noticed your book's self-published. Did you do that by choice, or did you? Because now you've got to do the hard work in publicizing it yourself.
It is,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I'm probably a little too cocky. I started my career actually in publishing. I lived in New York City in the early 1980s, and I actually worked in the publishing industry. And
Mhm.
so I learned a lot about book publishing, and I've always been a book aficionado. And back then it was a lot harder in terms of, we had teams of people, we had editors, and we had to, get
Mhm.
printing and paper and shoot the film. It was a whole industry really. And today with self-publishing, I'm a bit of a computer geek, and but how hard could it be to do it myself? It's hard, but at the
Yeah,
same
but now
time,
you've got to be a book publicist as well.
and then you've got to be a
Yeah.
publicist, and yeah, so it is a stretch going, mostly alone. I do have some friends and others helping me, but it's just part of who I am, and it's my
Okay.
it's my baby.
It's fun for you. Okay,
It
that's
is.
good. Your family background in the book doesn't seem to be one of, running marathons and stuff. You seem to start from a position of I don't know, let's call it poor lifestyle choices and afflictions, a bit of alcoholism in your family, yourself. You started on the couch
Hmm.
um, with more a couch potatoes sort of approach. Um, so given that you came from a background that wasn't really conducive to, healthy lifestyle and running, where did you break away from that and get into this
Sure.
sort of pursuit?
Well, growing up, I grew up on Long Island in New York. I had blue collar parents. Mom was a teacher. Dad was a New York police officer, NYPD. I did play some sports. I we had a good band program, so I played drums, percussion all the way through school, and so I had that going on. And I did some wrestling. I was too short and too stubby for baseball. I was scared of the ball, so I didn't last very long in baseball. I did find my way through lacrosse. I played field lacrosse, and I was pretty good. I didn't know I was pretty good. Somebody told me at a class reunion many years later that they thought I was a good player. So I didn't really have a lot of, I'll say, support. I just kind of fumbled my way through high school, and knew I had to go to college. I went to school and got my education. Married a Canadian woman. I moved to Canada actually, and started working in the food service industry in food sales, and loved it. And I love the samples,
Uh-oh.
and I love the the beverages with the boys after work,
Yeah.
and so I started to eat too much, drink too much. Found myself kind of in my early 30s, way overweight, very slothy. I was over 220 pounds. I had a very cheesy mustache. I always laughed that I looked like Pablo Escobar, the Colombian drug lord. It was on my passport photo for about 10 years. And I would go through customs and they'd look at my photo. They'd look at me like three times. And say,
Checking you out.
no, I'm not Pablo. So I just felt that I guess self-loathing, dejection. I had a couple of epiphanies around running and sports. I remember I was living in Orillia, Ontario at one point, and there was a triathlon that was being staged very close to the park near my house. And shamefully, I kind of hid behind a tree and watched all of the runners run by, and I watched the cyclists, and then and thought, wow, that's amazing. I could never do that. And even going back in the early '80s, when I was living in New York City, I happened upon the New York City Marathon. I actually found photos. It's ironic. I snapped about 12 photos back then. And if anybody remembers the early days of the New York City Marathon, Freddie LeBeau was a god of running the New York City Marathon. It was Greta Waits. There were other big names in that marathon, and honestly, when I was on 59th Street, right near Central Park, watched the the pace car with Freddie in it, and then watched the men and the women, and I thought at that moment, like running in the New York City Marathon was like going to the moon. Like that's how far out of my reach it would be. And
Mm.
I only knew about the Boston Marathon, and that was like going to Mars. Like there's no way in my life, like unbelievable. So that kind of set some of the stages up. And then the Lost Weekend, I talk about in my book when I went to Las Vegas
Yeah.
with my father. My father, great man, but was never home. Um, New York cop, New York police officer, and after work they would go to the pub and drink the day off. They had a lot of PTSD going on in their
Yes.
minds. And so as he got to retirement, he retired and he pretty much drank beer every day. He used to say, "Well, I'm not an alcoholic. I only drink beer." And I said, "Well, you drink beer every day, Dad."
Yeah.
And there was alcoholism up his line. We had alcoholism up my mother's family tree as well, and I I watch myself. I can have a few drinks, but I know that I have that gene disposition and have to be careful and so anyway, I was in Las Vegas I took my father, and he had a brother living there and my cousin. And anybody ever been to Las Vegas it's the longest night you'll spend on a weekend. And we spent a weekend there, and I couldn't keep up. They were, partying, drinking, gambling. I'm not a gambler. I think there's also if you've got the alcohol gene, you also have the gambling gene, it
Yeah.
seems, and that dad had both of those. And then at the end of the weekend, I really felt a sense of shame in myself. And I knew also that I didn't want to go that way, and I had to make changes, and I had to do it quickly. I was, in my late 30s, again, not feeling happy with my direction. Went to at the airport flying back home. I remember that I went to the bookstore and looking at the car and driver magazines that I would normally buy, and there was this Runner's World magazine with this fit runner on the cover, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I kind of grabbed a copy, tucked it under my arm. Then I saw Men's Health magazine was another one with weightlifter bodybuilders on it, and like, oh, that's a different world. I don't know anything about that either. Let me grab one of those. And then looked at the books. There was a book called Eat Right for Your Blood Type, and I grabbed that. And I read cover to cover. I read all three, the two magazines and the book, cover to cover on the plane home. I pulled out those. They used to have the cards. I like immediately subscribed to both magazines
Oh
when I
Yeah.
got back.
yeah. Yeah.
And I started, receiving Runner's World magazine. I went to, at the time, Alan, you might remember the Zellers department stores,
Sure.
and it was like a Target in Canada, and I bought one of those Rocky sweatsuits with the pull-up
Okay.
hoodie that Rocky
Yeah.
wore,
Yeah.
and I laced up and I went for my first run, and I ran from one telephone pole to the next telephone pole and nearly collapsed. And then the next day I ran two telephone poles. Then I ran three telephone poles. And that was really how I started. It was just, shift the mind, the 21-day habit. And then as I progressed, I started running. I was running 30 minutes twice a week. I had no idea. Back then, I didn't have any sport watches, or I might have had a
No.
Timex watch. And on Saturdays, I would run for 60 minutes. And then one day I took my bike out for a ride, and I had an odometer, and I realized I was running 5Ks for 30 minutes. I was running 10Ks for 60 minutes. And I was blown away that I was actually running that far. I had no idea. And that really started it. Then I progressed to finding my tribe. And that's, one of my life lessons: find your tribe.
Do you take caffeine when you run? Lots of people do because it's in gels and stuff. And caffeine's legal and it's been proven to work. There's actual science that shows that it improves your endurance running performance.
And there's anecdotal data from when you have your coffee in the morning and you go for a workout versus when you forgot to have your coffee or you didn't have time and you went for a workout and it was terrible.
And the trouble with coffee is there's a lot of liquid just to get your caffeine dose.
Yeah, so then you have to stop for the bathroom mid-workout. Very impractical. Which is where Caffeine Bullet comes in.
What's Caffeine Bullet, Liz?
It's it's a caffeine supplement. It's wrapped up like in a candy. And it tastes like candy. And you can get 100 milligrams or 85 milligrams, which is about a cup of coffee, but without the liquid.
So we've tried the mint flavor and the chocolate orange flavor, and they're both pretty yummy.
If you want to try them for yourself, we do have a 20% off discount code. So go to the link in the show notes and you can check out what Caffeine Bullet is and get your 20% discount.
Pretty generous.
It is pretty generous.
And we'll get a small benefit, so you're helping out the
Speaking of which, back to the podcast.
I'm really impressed with how early on the book you'll speak to everything you just spoke to in terms of your family and the predispositions as you mentioned, and it's really cool, and I think it takes a lot of bravery to express it the way you have now, to have written it down in a book. In fact, I think lesson number 25 is literally name your destructive patterns so they lose their power, and it's
Yes.
just something you seem to just do it so easily. If a new runner or a runner who's still trying to figure themselves out as they're growing from a different lifestyle into a running lifestyle. How would you suggest they do that on their growth path in order to name that destructive power? How difficult was that for you? Because it seems like you're right there now. It's very easy for you to do, but how does someone do that early on in their running career?
Thank you. It's really, first of all, you find that running does help with our mental health. There's definitely a correlation with that, and you just start to feel better, really. Just moving, right? And I was on another podcast. It was somebody it was a mental health related podcast, and we talked about how running, but any physical exercise, just lacing up, getting out, just starting to move, and I mean, I didn't have the quintessential real rock bottom that, maybe people that, everybody that's gone through the AA programs or gone into other rehabs and things, they really hit that rock bottom, or somebody that's, been incarcerated. There's a lot of traumas out there that people have experienced. And, I always say about people that, are in prison, they're somebody's brother, sister, son, daughter. We're all people. We're not perfect. And, I try to make good choices most of the time. I've made a few bad choices, like many of us. And so, it is a difficult, it is, but at some point, that nobody's coming, nobody's going to save us. We have to save ourselves, and we have to work within ourselves and find that. And it doesn't have to be running. Anything that you do that, you can maybe take your mind off of, other things, and shift it to something positive, and making better decisions. So that was my moment of truth. And and was the best decision I ever made, of course, because I really reinvented myself from going down one path that I knew was destructive to another path that was constructive. And I completely, and the subtitle of my book, Becoming Who You're Meant to Be, that's kind of the whole, the gist of the book is all of us, we don't know what we're capable of at the end, right? So, everything else is just a journey, and life itself is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And there's all these milestones, and there's all these hurdles, and there's all these walls that we hit. So really a lot of metaphors for just life in general.
So that rock bottom that you hit was a turning point because you decided that was your turning point. That's when you changed direction, not because there was
Absolutely.
anything big. I like that. Lesson number one, by the way.
It is one. You read the book. Thank you.
Yeah, anybody would think you've read the book, Sean.
You're awesome.
Yeah.
You have the Cole's notes on it.
Yeah, one of the kind of cool things that I learned a few weeks ago that I came across, and I can't remember whether it was in a podcast or somewhere else, but that in fact people are waiting to get motivated in order to take action. So the waiting for some sort of impulse to push them into action. But in fact, despite what everybody says, it's actually the other way around. The way you get motivation is you take action.
Right.
So you act your way into the motivation. And I think that's what we see you doing in the book. But that's a general word of wisdom it's not mine, but it's passed on for anybody who wants to kick their program into action. Don't wait for motivation. Yeah, act. The motivation will follow the action.
That's right. I had a training manager. I was in corporate training and development for many years as well, and that really helped me a lot too. By the way, because I was really able to. I was teaching what I was, professing. I was teaching programs like stress management, time management, all these things. But my boss said, early on, nobody's coming, nobody's going to save you. Nobody's going to discover you. You've got to do it yourself. You've got to do it for yourself. And the stinking thinking mindset or the victim mindset, a lot of people suffer from it, or you even not even stinking thinking, but you've got that, whether it's yourself, but you've also got family members, so-called friends that, I still hear it. We hear it every time, we meet somebody, oh, you run, like, how are your knees? Like my knees are great. How are you sit on a couch? How are your knees? But there's people don't want you, they don't want you to succeed because it makes them feel better maybe about themselves.
Yeah, they're justifying their own situation.
Right.
Really, their own non-action. One of the things that was cool about reading your book, Gene, was in fact, we sort of both live and operate on the eastern seaboard of North America. So in fact, Canada and the US. So in fact, a lot of the runs that you do are all ones that we've done.
Right.
We know them.
Crossed paths.
So when you're talking to us about, running the Ottawa Marathon, we're there with you because we just did it like 6 months ago, or et cetera, et cetera. So basically your book's full of big Canadian and USA endurance races and events.
Right.
Not exclusively, but there's a lot of them. Do you have any particular favorites and what categorizes a favorite?
Sure. Well, Ottawa, was my first marathon. So, and I was taking one of the running room marathon clinics, and we trained for it, and it was very special to me. One of the reasons I was with a new tribe of runners, we were type A, we were very competitive with each other. I actually missed qualifying for the Boston Marathon by 23 seconds in that marathon. It was very special to me. Montreal was my second one, and I actually did qualify for Boston. And so that was special. And then and ironically, that year, I applied to the New York City lottery, and I got a spot in the New York lottery for the first time I applied. And I ran the New York City Marathon. So I ran Ottawa, I ran Montreal, New York City, and then Boston, my first 4 marathons. And that was it. I mean, I'm hooked for life. Boston's always special to me. I know, it gets sometimes, it's definitely, over the top and, bit cliched. I just love being in Boston. I get goosebumps, running that marathon. And I did run it 10 years in a row. I was qualifying in Boston added, and that's other details in the book. But that was special. But New York was always special too, because again, that was my first time I ever watched a marathon live. And I got to run it. I got to go to Mars. I got to go to the moon. Then I got to go to Mars because I ran Boston too, and it was like, and it wasn't a one and done, right? And I was like, okay, now I can check that off my bucket list. No, it just morphed into who I was becoming as a runner. And I always said, when I work is what I do, but being a runner is who I am, and that is my identity. And so, and anything that you do well, or you do, whether you're playing pickleball or you're a golfer, or I mean, mostly I would say sports related, but anything, just be the best you can at that. Do the best. Don't you can dabble in everything. I've tried golf, I've tried pickleball, but I always come back to running, even though I do the triathlons and I cycle. That's who I am, and that's a good lesson in my book, of course, too. But become who you're meant to be, and find your tribe, find your people.
How do you describe it to listeners? Being that overweight guy watching these impossible athletes, not suddenly, but after a period of time, finding yourself at the event that you could have only dreamed of watching on TV, and even then you probably wouldn't have bothered to tune in.
Yes.
How do you describe that to our
Well,
listeners?
I'll go first to the triathlon. That first, really a triathlon. When I watched those people go by, and I was like, again, both mesmerized, mournful of my state. I was very, humbled, really. About maybe a year or two later, I entered the try level, and I had an old clunker, like hybrid mountain bike that I rode, and I got passed pretty much by everybody on the bike. But I was in the race, but I also knew I got to get a better bike, and so I had that motivation. But I actually, I mean, it took every ounce of courage and effort to get myself into that race. The New York City Marathon, that third marathon ever of mine, that was an incredible experience. If you've been involved in that, they had the United Nations, the Freedom or Friendship Run the day before, and you meet people from all over the world, and and then just being in that and running, that was another one, 26 miles of goosebumps, because the crowds are, 10, 20 people thick, coming off that 59th Street Bridge. For those of you that have run it, and it's dead quiet, and you come around that
Yeah,
turn on the downhill
you go
ramp, and
down
it's
the hill into
into a beehive,
mayhem.
right? Mayhem,
We've all done
and
it.
it's right? And I mean, who doesn't get like supercharged from that? And then you run all 5 boroughs and you finish in Central. I mean, it's so historic, and what a and again, everybody's high-fiving, and then the post race. So just all of that spirit of it is incredible. So, and then back, so Alan, your question, which was my favorite? All 110 are my favorite. I've run 110. Did you want to talk
Yeah,
about run
yeah.
for the Toad, by the way?
That's we can do that, but just while you trigger me there, um, people ask us sometimes, what's your favorite running book? We've done 120 books on the podcast, and what I say to them is actually it's a bit like asking you, who's your favorite child?
Right.
If you have a number of children, you can't have a
They
favorite.
all are. Yes,
Everyone is a favorite in a different
that's
way.
awesome. Yeah, 110. And there honestly, there's not one that I didn't like. I mean, in the moment, a few of them I did, maybe most of them I didn't like in the moment
Mm,
when you're at,
yeah.
kilometer, 34. But finishing, and everyone has a different culture, maybe vibe, the pre-race, the race itself, the post, and the terrain. You get to see a city or a town. You meet people from all over the world. It's just a great event, all of them.
Sometimes I find the experience for someone who's as has great as memory as you might even see this, that you find that it's the success of it, or the time you ran, literally how you ran, how you finish, overrides sometimes the experience, and it might not turn to your favorite, but it might be one of the most memorable ones. And as someone who's run certain times and, hitting your first sub three, you never forget that. And as
Right.
a reader of your book, I was able to connect with that because, not only have you run so well, but you write so well. I remember reading a race story and then we get to the time. It's like, oh, 3 hours and 53 seconds, so close. And then a few pages later, we get almost sub three. And then we just move forward. And I remember seeing your first one where you
Yes.
hit sub three, not just sub three, 249, sorry, 2:59:49. We're talking
Hey, what's wrong with
2:58.
that?
I might be throwing shade at someone over here.
That's
That's a quick
awesome.
one. Good job, Alan. But you hit 258.
Yes,
And it seems like you ran several marathons
Arizona.
under 3:01 before
Yeah.
hitting sub three. Now, maybe that might not be your favorite race, but what was the experience before hitting sub three like? Was it frustrating? Was it exhilarating? Did it just keep pushing the carrot further until you reached for it? How'd that feel for a lot of that we want to hear about?
And not everybody gets to run at that level or can run at that level. So, I was very humbled that I was, I had that ability. Again, not being identified ever as a runner, and all of a sudden, and I was in my 40s. So age grading, it would have been a lot faster. However, I ran, I think the number's 30 marathons between 2:56 and 3:05. So I had a lot of marathons, like
Oh man.
right
Oh
at
my
3 hours,
God.
3:01. I ran the Philadelphia Marathon 2 years in a row, 3 hours and 23 seconds. The next year I ran it 3 hours and 24 seconds, literally a second apart, and didn't break 3 hours.
Oh
Like,
my
like,
God.
oh my, I ran my heart out. I leave it all out
Oh
there.
wow.
But I never ever was like bummed about it or dejected. There's always the next one, right? And
Mhm.
I had a really good coach, Dean Hebert. He's in my book, and I got to see Dean a few months ago in Arizona. He's mostly retired. He coached ASU. He's just a phenomenal high school coach and track coach, actually. And I was training with him, and in the winter when I would go to Arizona, and his track, and they were all track runners, and he was always like, why are you running those marathons? Why don't you just stick to the 400 or the 800? And I'm like, no, I want to run a marathon. And he's a really good psychological coach. He really gets in your head. So he was kind of coaching me, that I could do it, and I think that was part of it. Not, I had another coach. If you want to run fast, you have to run with fast people, right?
Have to
Like,
train
okay, that
fast.
makes
Yeah.
sense. So there's a lot of wisdom, but there's also your physical, there's always a limit. There's a glass ceiling for all of us of what we can physically do. So maybe, the 3 hour, but I was so close so many times. In that first one, I had a friend who was pacing with me, Frank, and at the halfway, I was a little over 125, and I was kind of on a 250 pace, but I knew I want to have some money in the bank, time in the bank.
Mhm.
So we got through the half, and he's like, I'm done, I'm out. And I felt good. And I'm like, whoa, this is different. I'm feeling good here, and so I remember that, step by step, and how good I felt all the way through. And for the 258, I always went out at around a 250, 255 pace. I never broke 255, but and then a few years later, all my friends went out to California, my running guys, and they were all like slower. I say slower than me. They were all around 3 hours, 258. They all go to California. They go to California Sim. They all have PBs, 250s, 252s.
Mhm.
And I didn't go. And they had a tailwind. And anybody that knows that race, it's one of
Yeah.
the fastest, marathons. And so we have a joke with my buddy Frank, because he's got a faster PB time than I do. Although he's a better triathlete than I am, and I have a faster triathlon time than he does. So we
That's
rub it in
poetic.
each other's noses.
I love it. Shout out to
Awesome.
Frank and shout out to Coach Dean because I find as a reader in your book, I say shout out because we literally have stories of your running experiences intertwined with people. And these people are close to you, whether it's Coach Dean, Frank, Ken, just amazing people sometimes hopping on board or carrying you from one exploit to another or just one experience to another. And you talk about it a few times, being part of a collective in running. Can you tell us more about that? When did you figure out that being in a collective in running circles is such a great factor? And what do you think about it today, looking back?
Yeah, absolutely. So The running room was fantastic. Pre-COVID, they did stop a lot of their clinic programs, I believe, since COVID. But I signed up for that marathon. They have a marathon clinic. They had to learn to run. They had a 5K, 10K. I taught those clinics as well, and so I jumped. I went right into the fire and joined the marathon clinic. And I remember sitting in the basement of our local running room, about a dozen runners. We didn't know each other, and we're all scared, scared of what we signed up for. And honestly, like I'm probably, still close friends with at least 10 of them that, I keep in touch with out of that, dirty dozen.
Mm.
We lost a couple along the training program because they got injured. And so, it wasn't that we were type A's all together, but collectively we all encourage each other and, we just, accomplished. We all finished that first marathon together, and we stayed in touch. And a lot of them I ran with for many years, and then I met other people along the way. One of the great things about this sport, I talk about Frank. He was actually Olympic level cross country skier. I know Olympic. I know our Canadian race walk champion Rachel, and I know her parents and Lavalley's. And I met her husband. He's a U.S. race walk champion. These people that have been to the Olympics and people, and having a humble background and not having been identified as an athlete, I hang out with athletes, and so by us, I still don't feel like I'm a real athlete, but I'm an athlete by osmosis, I guess.
There you are, an athlete. Yeah, everybody's an athlete, and everybody's probably quite near the pointy end of what they can achieve for themselves.
Right.
So,
Hmm.
um, let me kick you over to the life lessons, which I think
Yes, sir.
are an important part of the book. Did you collect the life lessons? In the book, they're all listed at the end. But did
Yes.
you did you collect them as you went through your running experience? Did you sort of keep a book and note them things
It
down,
was,
or
yeah, it
did
was
they all
more, it
occur to
just,
you while you were writing the book?
yeah, it more just kind of morphed into the lessons, because as the more that I became more of a seasoned runner and had all these experiences, and I was in corporate training. I was in talent, director for talent management for a food company for North America. I had a high level training, working with leaders, training. I was training
Hmm.
company presidents, so there was a lot
Yes.
of, a lot of leadership and coaching that I did for business, but not running. So there was a correlation. And so
Yeah.
originally I was going to write a business book, and I'm actually my next book will be the marathon mindset for leaders and entrepreneurs, and I'm working on which are the
Cool.
life lessons for leaders. But
Yeah.
there's just as a parallel, or to everything that we learn. And life isn't always full of learning experiences and lessons. So I didn't have, this is lesson 15 at the time, and then I was able to find the buckets, and because I had to put them at the back of the book because I was doing so many final edits, and I didn't really want to. I thought, well, do I put a pop-up box on page 22 for this? Here's a life lesson, and then kind of stop the reading so you can mull over the life lesson. I thought, no, you know what? I think I'll put them at the back, and because the book is just free flowing, and it just seemed to flow better that way.
Hmm.
So, but the lessons are there, and and all of us. I mean, anything that we do that's a test of our abilities teaches us something.
I guess I'm going to ask you the question about which children are your favorites? Um, again, do you have any life lessons, that you think are particularly good ones, or strong, or that you want to
Well, I
Which
think,
throw
life
out there?
lessons would you
yeah.
send to college is what we're asking.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
I did my
Yeah,
I
which
did my
ones are you hiding in the
education. Yeah.
cupboard, and which ones do you
Actually,
get out when company
yeah,
comes?
that was the
Yeah.
other reason one of the other reasons I did start to run as well was because I was doing an MBA program at the time as well, and I needed a lot of energy because I worked full time, and then I had to work in the evenings on my MBA, on my program, on my classwork, and I needed energy. So that and there's that the health aspect of running. You actually feel better. You get more energy by running after you run, and the
Mhm.
hardest part is to get out there. But after, who hasn't gone for felt lousy? Oh, I feel terrible. I don't want to run a day and you go for a run, you come back and you have one of the best days ever, right? Because you got that recharge or re-energize. So that was a big part of it. Is it actually not only helps mentally, but obviously with your stamina and your physical strength as well. So and again, the lessons, dig deep and just persevere, find out what you're capable of, and don't wait. I was listening to another podcast, Alan, as well, last few days, and it was just like, it was a philosophy one about not waiting, like take the initiative now, because how many, we don't know what our timeline is, right? And I don't want to be one of those people, my last days, coulda, woulda, shoulda. I squeeze everything I can out of life.
I genuinely like that because it's one thing to chase what you like to do. It's one thing to achieve, but consistency is truly the part of the winning formula, if not the main part of the winning formula. It's, I think, the name of the game. And at one point you were in a management job, studying in an MBA program, traveling for work, still a devoted family man, raising kids, and you still continue to log the miles. And you did it. Mentally, it was there. Do you have any practical, any advice for consistency throughout that someone who maybe isn't achieving that level of consistency could just try? Anything you could give out to anyone listening?
Well, good question. I'm not really a great morning person. I'm really good morning for analytical work, so I will do most of my analytical work in the morning. I know that about myself. I prefer an afternoon or early evening run. For that, weekends I'll get up and run earlier. But so I think knowing yourself, whether you're a morning person or if you're better. I know people that are at the gym at 5:30 in the morning. It's like, wow, and they can do that. And I know other people that go to the gym at 9 o'clock at night, but they're doing it. And we all have time. Like, I never have the TV on. I listen to music in the background. I'm doing something, but I very rarely. It takes me. I'm in season 6 of Better Call Saul. I think I started it, 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Like,
A good one. Stay with it.
I watched them in like 15-minute increments, So I'm on episode 2 of season 6. So I just can't binge watch. That's just not in my DNA, right? And but if you are that type of person that can binge watch, turn it off. Take that time and do something a little more productive, and for your health as well. And I think that's a better use of our short time that we have than binge watching. But that's myself.
I find that you talk about going to Mars, going to the moon, achieving things that you didn't think you could achieve. And then, I'm going to quote you from the Peterborough Examiner. You say, "I don't identify myself as a super athlete. I'm just an average person." I personally, if I were to speak of you without you being in the room, I would say Gene is far more than an average person. I think that is a super athlete.
Well, thank you.
That's coming out of you. And I find it truly inspiring for someone to go through all the steps you have, to write about it, and to just achieve it step by step. And so my question for that is, things like that, we see it as achievements, but then your dedication to your craft as an athlete, I remember early on in your book, you'll talk about visualizing your race course. You're dedicated to a level where you'll reach out to fellow athletes at the expo. You'll ask around for nuggets of information. You're always remaining curious, and you're always open to learning more. You even drive or walk the course, things
Absolutely.
that are incredible. And I wanted to know, is that sort of curiosity something that you've transferred over from something else? Is that something that's innate to you? Can someone foster that sort of ability to try 1% more? How do you advise on that?
That's a great question. I maybe I go back to my youth, because I used to. My mother was astounded. I was 12 years old, and I would go into New York City by myself and just wander around the city. So I have a big picture view of things, right? And so, but I do. If I'm going to do something, I'm gonna do it to the best of my ability. I read all the Daniels books and Fitzinger's, and talked to Bill Rogers a few times. I met so many other athlete runners, and I picked their brains. And I remember meeting Bill Rogers at Boston one year. Bill, how do I beat this course? And he gave me some tips, before one of my best runs ever at Boston. And so it is a sense of curiosity in everything that we do. And when you're going to do when for myself, I want to do 110%. I'm not going to do 80%. I line up. There's times that I'm not 100% ready physically. I don't think, it's very rare that any of us can be 100% ready at the start line, but I'll do the very best to be there to give myself a good chance to be, for success. And then I do enjoy like driving, I still would, the last time I ran Boston in 2022, I drove the course again the day before. Took my wife and showed her the different
Just in
bumps in
case
the
they
hills.
changed it on you.
Make sure they didn't throw an extra hill in there.
We'll fix Gene. We'll change the course this year. No. You can't beat him like that.
You're talking to a guy who took, I don't know, half a dozen marathons to realize that there's a lake on the course of Boston, right, Alan?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I've done 8 Bostons now, and
Good for you. Yeah.
coming up to my 6th, we were talking to the author of the Boston Marathon Handbook.
Yes.
And he said, when you get past the lake, I said, whoa, hang on. There's no lake.
Yes, there is.
There
Yes,
is.
yes. The fire hall, you turn right, come on, all those.
Maybe not as well prepared as Eugene.
Well, actually, I know that Boston Handbook, and I had another guy somewhere along the way. I have another booklet. It was a PDF, like step by step of Boston. Maybe that is the Boston Handbook, but there is something like it's like Boston, like mile by mile, and right every footstep, literally.
And I guess that's probably summarized very quickly in bonus life lesson number 1. So I guess that's life lesson number 101. Preparation beats last minute heroics.
Yes. Yes. And that's, right, proper preparation. And then again, that's back to a work analogy, a business analogy, right? You don't just wing it at work. I've been in sales for a lot of my career, I don't go on a sales call and wing it. I research the customer. I make sure I know my product. I make sure I have a pitch or a way that I'm going to sell and handle objections. So it's no different in how we prepare ourselves for a run, whether it's, a 5K, and, you've got to know. I remember there was somebody I was training with, and he says, well, I'm going to run a 320 marathon, and I'm running with him. And I said, well, you don't run anything faster than like a 6:30 kilometer, you got to run like a 5:30. He's like, I said, I beg, I apologize, but I don't think you're capable of doing it because you don't even know you haven't ever trained at that level, and try to explain that. So you've got to train at the level too that you want and be prepared.
Maybe Sean and I could just take a minute out and maybe just share a couple of lessons that resonate with us. Would you permit us to do that, Gene?
Excellent. Please.
I'll give Sean's the kid, so he can go first.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Maybe we could do a couple each and see what Gene thinks.
Absolutely. I think they all resonate around the same idea of building a community. I think that resonates a lot with me. And so one of the first ones was, a training, I think it was lesson 43, a training group turns fear into excitement. And if you're in the middle of any sort of big training block, or if you're ever in the phase of your life where you're building more in and outside of your life and your work, I find that sometimes the runs can become more fearful than they are. I really enjoyed the fact that, again, you put it into words so well, the ability to run as a collective, know that you're all pulling the same weight, and sometimes you're pulling a little bit less on your own. I really like that idea. So, when I ever go back to Montreal, I hop right into the training group that I ever was in before, and I would run it. And I think that you did some of the same with the running room clinics before, when they were consistently available, I think. Another one that I liked a lot was, and I think this goes into one of your mantras, turning perfection focusing from perfection and focusing onto momentum. Lesson number 19, staying in motion over decades matters more than any single PR. Sometimes we think of a PR as, I've hit a new level, I could do more, it's been a turning point, I've achieved what I want to achieve, and it resonates with us. And sometimes it can carry us forward. It can motivate us to do more. However, I think sometimes we are in phases of our training where if we just run every day without having to race, without having to train for anything specific, without having to get a PR, we could build such a wider and stronger base for our lives in running and outside of running that we can let carry on those lessons from running into that. I think that resonated a lot with me, that it's one of those lessons that you have where you can replace running with anything else, and it works in business, it works in teaching, it works in career, it works in family, it works in anything. So it's one of those where I could just use as a mantra in my teaching career with anyone.
Excellent.
What about you, Alan? What kind of advice did you like to take from the lessons?
Well, you heard my lesson number 33 at the start. Do nothing foolish, as opposed to did not finish, which is great. I like particularly like ones that kind of reframe. They're like paradigm shift type of
Hmm.
lessons. But just following on from your stuff with respect to community, lesson 59, community turns personal victories into shared celebrations. What that really says, that's management speak for find your tribe.
Yes.
Just get out there and find a buddy. If you're running, if you've arrived in a new place and you don't know anyone, they're all out there. They're a bit geeky because we runners are a bit shy and geeks mostly.
Yeah.
So they can be difficult to sort of find straight away. They're not just leaping out at you saying, come and join us, come and join us. But in fact, they're the best friends you'll ever have.
Absolutely.
And when you achieve something, it's so much more fun because you get to do it all together. You get to celebrate other people and they get to celebrate you. So it's kind of fun. On a personal one, just individual advices. One that I particularly liked was lesson 28. Talk to yourself like a coach, not a critic. Which is one of the things I say to people. Talk to yourself like your best friend.
Right.
If you were saying, if you were thinking, oh, my training is going really badly, don't get down on yourself. Imagine your best friend was saying that to you.
Hmm.
How would you respond?
Okay.
Now respond like that, i.e. your coach. Be your own coach, not your own critic.
Hmm.
Which I think is useful advice. Sometimes we get on our backs. We're our own, and sometimes we're proud of it. We say, oh yeah, I'm my harshest critic. I drive myself hard, etc. Yeah. Lighten up, guys.
Right.
Yeah.
Almost as if we reached where we reached because we were so harsh with ourselves. Sometimes it's actually in spite of that we
Mhm.
reached so far. I like it.
Yeah. And that it goes back to that, stinking thinking and, negative talk, self-talk, right? And,
Yeah.
if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can. And
Yeah.
you give yourself permission sometimes to fail. And, I go back, Alan, if you don't mind, DNF, did nothing foolish.
Yeah.
And I've had two in my career, really. One was a 100-kilometer race, and I DNF'd after 70 because I had burnt, my metatarsals were burning up in the Javelina 100. But, I always tell people, everybody hurts. Everybody's hurting out there. When you're at, kilometer 34 or mile 20 in a marathon, and you look around, and there's nobody smiling. Everybody's, oh, this sucks. I hate this. I'm hurt. We're all hurting. But if you're injured, stop. Like, don't push through an injury. But if you're hurt, we're all hurting. And that's really the test of fortitude, really, that you can push through the hurt and, and obviously, again, not getting injured. And that's that did nothing foolish. That's that, when you're at a point where you're going to injure yourself, you twist an ankle or your knee or you pull a hamstring. I've had, training runs where I leave the house, I'll get down to the end of the street and feel a twitch in my hamstring. And you know what? I turn my watch off and I walk home because I don't want to do anything foolish. I want to run for the rest of my life. And so that's, goes back to that as well, DNF.
Speaking of DNFs, there's a great story in your book, and I think we're going to switch gears into like more specific race stories, which I find are so easy to so nice to grip on, so cool to grip on. There's one, actually not yours, but of your friend Dale at a race in the Alberta Rockies. I would say that he actually did something foolish. I don't want to spoil it. I would love to hear what you have to say about that story, and if there's a lesson there for people in races like those, which are out in the open and they do the kind of thing Dale does. I would love
Yeah.
to hear that story and hear what your lesson is from that.
Yeah, Dale's a great friend. He's a 100 miler, crazy man. I think he's run about completed about 8 or 9. He was in the Canadian Death Race run that you're talking of. And
Mhm.
actually, I've never run in that, but I love the name of a race that has death in it.
Oh, and
But
by the way, Dale is not the person who did something foolish. It's the running buddy
it
with
was the
Dale.
running buddy who did
It's
something foolish.
exactly.
So they
Yeah.
were running, they were running at a certain on a leg, and he had a running friend, acquaintance that they decided they were going to stay together and run. I think the entire race together, or part of it. And he was from Ontario. Dale's from Fort Perry. Anyway, they were running, and they stopped. I think at an aid station, or they stopped for a rest. And the friend decided, I'm going to take off on my own. He left and started running ahead of Dale. And so the race, the aid stations are 5, 10K, probably 10K apart. So Dale gets to an next aid station, and how's my friend doing? They're like, well, we got no record. They take a record of your bib that you come through. We have no record of him coming through. Now Dale's panicky because the guy had left. And so the long story, that the person took it upon themselves that they were struggling, and they decided to go off the course and go into town or something, and
Okay.
literally left the run. And meanwhile, they ended up getting a helicopter. They did a whole search for the guy, and they thought he was in trouble, and they had a whole search party and found him. But it ruined Dale's race because he was so upset that his friend might have got injured. Who knows, a bear attack or whatever it
Yeah.
could be out in the Rockies,
Thinking he's
right?
lying in a
Yeah,
canyon
so
somewhere.
that was just a bad decision. Now I've run, and anybody that's run ultras, your mind wanders. I've had hallucinations. It can be a scary place when you're running at night, and if you're by yourself, and it's sometimes it's easy to get off track if you're start bonking. So it's a very serious thing, this running, and even a marathon distance, and any race can be very serious. So that's knowing the course, and making good decisions. But tell somebody if you're gonna leave a race. Let the race director know.
Yeah.
Let a race official know.
Yeah, there was the story that I think fascinated me and Cheyenne in the book was the friendly race that you had with your friend Ken.
Yes.
We've all had amicable races where you're going to 10K together and you think, okay, so it's on. Let's see who's going to win. But you took this to another kind of extreme. So for our listeners, basically, you decided with your buddy Ken that you would throw down in a friendly fashion, but not one marathon, but 6 marathons in 6 weeks.
Yes. Yeah. So Ken was an amazing peer of mine. We were running very close together. We were having a lot of fun together, training at the time, and we were both pretty competitive with each other, but in a friendly way. And we were like, we probably had a few other races where we, or events that we, raced each other over the clock. And so it just happened to be one year that there were 6 marathons in Ontario in 6 weeks. They all lined up. They had the Scotiabank and the Toronto Waterfront the same time of year. And it was that Ottawa Fall Colors, Ottawa, Niagara Falls, and then Hamilton Road to Hope. And so we said, why don't we do this? Why don't we bet dinner? we're gonna run all 6 marathons in 6 weeks, and may the best man win. And we were running them at sub 3 hours. I'm so humble. I ran two. We both did. We ran 2 of the 6 at sub 3 hours. At the end, he averaged just over 3 hours. Average for 6 of them, and I was just at 3:01. So within a minute average. I had to buy him and his wife dinner, so I lost. But it was, and just the lessons from that. We had 100 lessons just from that in 6 weeks, and I mean, the condition we were in, oh my God, and we had so much fun, and we'd start together, and whoever got to the finish first would wait for the other one, and the very last one, actually, I struggled more than Ken. It was the Hamilton and Road to Hope, and he actually stayed with me, and we finished together the last one. He had already won the dinner, so he didn't care. But he's in my heart. He passed away about 3 years ago, very sadly.
God bless.
Yeah, but fantastic. What a sweet guy, and life of memories with that time.
I found the times absolutely incredible, because I was thinking, okay, you're all full of we're all full of piss and vinegar for the first one.
I know.
You'll do great, but come week 3, you'll be failing badly. But you weren't. You guys were still.
Alan, it's documented.
It
I didn't make those times up. You can find them online.
No,
I know.
amazing.
I look at it myself. Like, how did I run a 2:58 on my third marathon that week in 3 weeks?
To be honest, given the number of not only the number of endurance events that you did, and the frequency that you were doing them, but the pace that you were doing them at, I'm surprised you didn't get into, overtraining syndrome or an overuse injury, or you didn't seem to get that much of that. I mean, the usual niggles, but
yeah. I mean, I didn't just start out that way. So first of all, I mean, I'm sure I have pretty good genetics, but not putting that aside, certainly, I worked my way up to the 5K, the 10K, and into that condition.
Yeah.
So it wasn't something that anybody can just do. So we were extremely conditioned. I ran 15 marathons in 1 year. Like had decent times, right? And so it's great. You can do it. And I remember the conventional wisdom back in the day was, one good marathon a year. And yeah. I'm not going to listen to that. I'm just going to just see what my body can do.
He doesn't call himself a super athlete. What is that?
Yeah.
Come on. I don't want to spoil these times, but you got to pick up the book and see this beautiful table of times. These
at the back. Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. Speaking of being a super athlete, meeting super athletes, for listeners of a certain vintage, when you hear the name, Ed Whitlock, you feel some sort of way, and you've actually come in contact with the gentleman. May he also rest in peace. How was that experience of running alongside him and somewhat competing with him too?
Oh, well, I'm getting those goosebumps right now again. Ed was such a gentleman. I got to meet Ed probably, at least 5-6 times, at pre-races and at the start line, and talked to him after races. So Ed at the time, I think he had the 70, 75, 80, and 85 year-old world records. There was another gentleman that had the 90, that has the 90. So I was it was the Scotiabank Waterfront Marathon the 1 year, and anybody that knows that event, when you go out towards the beaches and you kind of turn around and you're coming back towards downtown Toronto. Yep. And I'm kind of on that stretch. There's about 7-8K to go, and I hear like the roar of the crowds as I'm coming, and I'm like, well, they're not doing that for me. Like, there must be somebody special. And here goes Ed Whitlock just trotting right past me. And I think he ended up, I think that was his 75-year-old record. He was like 3:15 or something that day. And like, unbelievable to see, like being passed by a 75-year-old.
Yeah.
I apologize. I think that one was the 80. And oh my God, like, I was so humbled, and I got to the finish line. Of course, there's a media scrum around him, and it was fantastic, just to see that. Dick Hoyt and his son, remember in the Boston Marathon,
yes.
Rick and Dick, and he would push his son in the, his son had the wheelchair. And I finished beside them 1 year in the Boston Marathon. Same thing. I'm coming through the finish of the Boston Marathon, and everybody's cheering, and and then I look, and there's Dick Hoyt, and all the media, runs over to him, and what about me?
So you get to do this podcast instead.
Oh, gee,
come on!
It's a poor second choice, but
yes, I am humbled.
I love that.
Yeah, you mentioned the Boston Marathon. I noticed you had a 10 Boston Marathon streak. I have 8 sporadic Boston Marathons myself. So
Congratulations.
when you talk about how special and fantastic the Boston Marathon is, I can understand that.
Yeah, you really
Uh,
get treated like a professional when you go
You
down there,
do,
Boston.
yes. I lined up, the closest I got to the front, I was in the second corral one year, which
yeah,
was fantastic because you line up right beside the Presbyterian church where
yeah,
all the elite
yeah,
athletes get to stay inside and stay warm when we're out freezing or getting rained on or whatever the weather is. And the one year, so I stood right there, and Ryan Hall came out, and all of
very
Med
cool,
and all of the, oh man, and
very
then all
cool.
the Kenyans and
Yeah. I've been
and
in
it's
I've been in
yeah,
the first corral, but the first
nice.
corral of the second wave.
Okay. That's
Which
awesome.
which these days actually you need to run sub 3
Yeah.
to get that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
It's
I
no,
can't get
it's
there now.
everybody that runs it is special.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And
yeah.
it's so humbling to be there, and every time, I don't care where you are in the field, you're there.
It's interesting because your Boston Marathon experience and mine don't really overlap very much, even though you've done 10 and I've done 8,
Hmm.
because I did 7 of mine after the bombings. Um, in
Hmm.
fact, my reaction to the bombings was, you can't do that to our sport. I'm going to
Yeah,
Boston. And then I
yeah.
started to go every year after that, sort
Good
of
for
Boston
you.
Strong and that
Yeah,
kind of thing.
thank you.
But you were actually there in 2013.
Yes.
And I don't know, but I read in your reading in your book, I was feeling that maybe the bombings kind of tainted the Boston experience for
Yeah,
you.
100%. It was
Yeah.
such a, well, it was a sweet day. I started, I felt great. It was going to be my 10th in a row. I was thinking, maybe I'll take a break after 10. My streak, I've had a good run with Boston.
Hmm.
I'm going to go out and celebrate tonight after the race, my 10th Boston. And I got through the finish line. I was staying at the Wellesley Copley Square Hotel, which is a block away, but literally over the library and then the finish
Yeah,
line.
very close.
I was 20 minutes back to my room. I had the windows open. I can hear all the crowds. And then I heard the first bomb blast. And I ran to the window, and everything just went to slow motion. Didn't know what I thought it was. Maybe the subway. There was the subway that runs on the Boylston, or maybe a building. Maybe there's construction that had collapsed. And
Mhm.
then when I'm looking, then I heard the second one. I knew it was serious. So I saw the smoke, and I remember one thing that stuck with me was there was somebody had like a child must have been holding a balloon, a helium balloon, and I watched this balloon floating in the air. I looked down on the corner. Now I could see the finish line area and the medical tents, and all of that was to my right. And I looked to the left, and I saw two police, Boston Strong, two police officers. They looked at each other, they looked at the crowd, and they ran towards it. And everybody was
Oh
running away.
boy,
And I thought, oh, that was it. And
that's not
and
good.
and I knew it was bad. It took about 6 minutes before it was on the news. So so it was a terrible, terrible day, and everybody that was injured, and it was horrible. And yeah, it just really took the wind out of my sails at the time, because obviously, it's such a beautiful event, and for people to really, everybody, there's even family members, everybody's always so excited and happy, and it's such a joyful, any run, but in Boston especially for some white reasons. And for some people to take that out of that spirit, it was a very bad day. And so yeah, I kind of, after that, I had a bit of a down period, and just kind of, I had a little bit of PTSD. Not, nothing, I wasn't on the street, thankfully, but I heard those, I heard it, and it's what I witnessed. And then the next morning, my hotel, if you've seen the movie, my hotel was the hotel that they used for the command center. We had people come over from another hotel. I had people showering in my room that, they had finished the race and they couldn't go back to their hotels. And I was bringing
Hmm.
people up to shower, whatever you could do, and then they took over the command, and the rest is history. But it was a bittersweet day, and thank you for going back. I just couldn't bring myself to go for a few years, and actually the next one after that was 2022. I finally went back.
Yeah, I did
Wow.
my first Boston in 2004, and I thought
Oh, wow.
one and done. It
Nice.
was the second hottest one after
Yes, that
2012,
was a hot
actually.
year.
And I thought one and done. And then after the bombings, I said, no, 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 no.
Yeah, good.
I have to act. So I went in 2014, 15, 16, 17.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, I am looking to go back in 2027, and I'm going to aim for the Georgina in September and try to get a spot for
Okay.
2027.
That's another one that we
So,
can.
yeah,
Yeah,
right.
it's a nice ledge.
Shores of Lake Simcoe.
That's incredible. And we've talked about a lot of different places you've been. I love the fact that you've mentioned the marathons you have by name, the experiences, even, dropping by which location, what happened as a person who ran them. It was incredible to read, as mentioned before. However, knowing that you're such a thoughtful person, you made a point of having your 100th marathon and be run exactly where your first one started.
Yes.
I know you reflected upon that. There's reason for that. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I was looking, I hit 99 and I'm like, where am I going to do my 100th? And, it just logically lined up that it was going to be Ottawa again. And it was just special, really was special, my 100th. So I just, it's Canada's capital. There's a lot of cliches around that. And it was also my 110th now too. So maybe I'll do it every 10 years.
120 coming up. It's going to be
Right.
Ottawa again.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I guess you've also told us now that you're maybe going to write another book, but that it's going to be a more a management
Yes.
type of personal growth book. So we can expect, I guess, life lessons coming out in that, and in one shape or another. Um, do you have any extra ones? Have you got like a part two or
Well, maybe the next 100 marathons might really get to 200. If you're part of the marathon maniacs, I just saw somebody the other day, and the woman ran 300 marathons. I'm like, oh my God, I got a lot of catching up to do. So, or you got the 50 states, or you got, there's so many streaks. Remember
well,
Dean Carnaz's 50 in 50 days, and
yeah.
so I didn't really go after the streaking. Just happened. It wasn't like methodical. But I kind of with the book, I have started my business book, and I don't want to be poached, but give it all away. But I kind of see like a chicken
Mm,
soup for the soul, marathon mindset for the
mhm,
leader, the sales,
yeah.
marathon mindset for healthcare professionals, whatever, because every business, and job, or if I always envy entrepreneurs, self-starters. It's amazing that people do that and put themselves out there. And so, running a business is like running a marathon, or running a sales department is like running a marathon. It's very, cliche around that. But then you've got, the prep and the start, and the startup, and then you're at the start line, then you hit the wall, and then you get to the fit, and then you start over again. So there's a whole process involved. So that's the concept. And I'm about 20, about a quarter percent finished with that one.
We'll see what
I'm
happens with that. But
fascinated by
Thank
that.
you.
It's incredible. Because you think about running a marathon, and it's one of the only events where you go in knowing you are going to suffer in it, and you got to commit through it. And there are so many things that we need full commitment to in order to succeed. A lot of skills, a lot of projects need full-time commitment, and sometimes when we commit, we don't think about the struggles that we're going to inevitably face.
mm,
And so, speaking in a room of runners, we know that we can apply that. It's a marathon, not a sprint mindset to almost anything.
yeah, it's going to be
Yes.
hard.
Right.
Exactly. If you were
Yes.
to meet someone who's not a runner
Hmm.
across me, who's never run a marathon, who's never stepped foot in it, and they're open to the idea, but you were to coach them as a
Hmm.
business mindset person and explain them that what you're about to embark on, there's a commitment and there's this wall you're going to face, but you
Yes.
can't explain what a 35-kilometer, or 34-kilometer, or 36-kilometer wall is.
Hmm.
How do you put that into their terms, or into more into terms that everyone can understand? How do you explain that to someone who's ever run?
Well, I think, anybody that's ever started a business, let's talk about an entrepreneur, run a business, right? You think, okay, I've got, seed money, I'm going to invest, I've got this great concept. Half my friends think I'm crazy, the other half support it. My family's either, so you've already got that, going for you or against you. And then you start your business. And, anybody that's been in business, businesses succeed and some fail, and you hit points along the way where you may decide, you know what, maybe, you know, I'm 2 years in and it's just, I've got to either pivot or maybe I should just shut it down, or maybe I just go for that big chunk of business loan and go all in and you know, add that extra building, hire the more people, and now I'm all in. So, you know, very much that, you know, and so you've got that decisiveness when you hit that wall in a run. You hit a wall in business as well. You know, most people, I don't, you know, most will hit that. You know, and, you
Yeah.
know, there's a lot of luck involved.
Your cash flow runs
But
out after 2 years.
yeah, at
That's
some
what
point,
happens.
cash flow, right? Do you keep dumping money into this thing? Is this gonna,
Yeah.
you know, really, is this concept, or do I have to change? Do I have to pivot and make a different decision? You know, make a different direction with the business? Do I hire people? Do I not? And then you know, then you're up and running, and then, you know, then now do I want to grow? Do I want to open another, you know, or do I want to franchise, or do I want to open up another building somewhere else?
Yeah.
So it's, yeah.
We see those people in running. They go, oh, okay, I've done my first marathon. Oh, now I could do an Ironman. That would be cool.
That's right.
Whoa,
Trail
whoa,
races.
Yeah,
okay, yeah,
yeah,
trail races, yes.
right.
Starry
I'm gonna do
eyed.
100-miler.
Yeah.
So
Um,
if people wanna are attracted or interested by what we've been talking about, and they wanna go and get a copy of your book, would you like to direct them somewhere? Where preferentially should they go?
Yeah, so I am on, thank you. I'm on Amazon, of course, Kindle for ebooks. Just my name, Gene Jochen. It's actually very humbling. I can put my name in Amazon and I pop up. So you can buy a
Yes, it's
copy
very
there.
cool.
It is very cool. I'm also in Chapters and Indigo in Canada and Barnes and Noble. And I'm in the database of libraries, so maybe one day every
Okay.
library will have a copy too. 40,000 libraries, I think, across North America.
wow.
And yeah,
And if people want to follow you, check out what you're up to and when your next book's coming out or when your next 10 marathons. So I was going to say your next marathon, but I mean,
thank you.
they're going by like this.
Well, my name again, genejoshen.com, and I've got I do offer speaking engagements, leadership coaching. I've been a long time again leader coach, and so I do enjoy working with business clients and helping businesses and sales teams. I'd be happy to talk to anybody about that as well, and definitely put myself out there when my next book comes out. And really been it's been great being here with both of you. Thank you so much. You really did your homework, and you were catching me up on some of the numbers. Is that number 35?
Well, we've probably read it more recently than you have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
That's amazing. We will be on the lookout for that book just on a personal level to be able to
Yeah.
take that marathon mindset into the big world. It's really cool to find. Can't wait.
What we're going to do now is, as I explained earlier, is we'll just give our final sort of summary thoughts.
Absolutely. Thank you both. It was fantastic being here, and I can't tell you how humbled I am. I love your podcast, and appreciate all you do for everybody.
And you as well. All that you do for other people too. Through the
Oh, thank you, Shane.
Thank you.
Looking at the notes, Shane, you seem to have more than I have, so I'll go first.
Go for it.
So, one step forward, 100 life lessons from 100 marathons, and also a second subtitle, Becoming Who You're Meant to Be, by Gene Jochen. Well, the life lessons in the book are basically excellent. I love those. Maybe it's my age, I don't know. I sort of collect those kind of things myself. And usually they start with, my mom always told me, or my dad always told me, God bless them, they're both gone now, but my mom always told me, you'll be a long time dead. Start now. It's kind of a sobering thought, but it's motivating if you take it that way. So I loved all the life lessons in the book. I think everybody can take value from them, not just runners, and you've recognized that clearly, Gene, as we hear from your forthcoming second book on basically business and life. Many of the runs that Gene does in the book are Canadian and US sort of staples. And I've also run many of those. So it made reading about them much easier to visualize and kind of more fun. Examples of ones that are done that come up in Gene's book Ottawa Marathon, Toronto Marathon, Montreal Marathon, Boston, Philly, Chicago, New York, Georgina, and Run for the Toad. And there were probably others as well, and probably all sorts of small runs that you didn't mention that we've probably both featured in years gone by. There's also an index at the back showing every event in the 100 marathons. So, you don't think Gene did it? Well, actually, here's the data. Here it is, one by one. Go down the list. We didn't really even talk about, because it's not our thing. We didn't focus much on, Ironmans and triathlons, but phenomenal big events that you also accomplished during that process. Finally, it's clear to me that Gene values the overall journey as a runner more than the times, even though his times are phenomenal. I think Cheyenne and I were reading the book going, oh, 3 hours and 23 seconds. How the hell could you let that happen? And then you'd go and do it again, like in the next race. And we're sort of going, oh my God. But I got the impression that certainly in your writing of the book that you were like calm about it. Like, this is nature taking its course. It's all good. It's valuable. And I think, the journey was the thing for you. And, it occurs in your life lessons as well. That, it's the people that matter, not the medals. I think that was one of your life lessons. And I think that's what makes the book appealing to all levels of runners. So if you're reading this going, oh, 3-hour marathon, that's a piece of pie. This book could still be for you. Or if you're reading it saying 3-hour marathon, that's impossible. I couldn't possibly do that. This book could still be for you because of that, I think, final aspect, that it's the value of the journey as a runner. So thank you for that, Gene.
Thank you both.
Incredible stuff. And that's actually where I'm going to pick up. I will pick up exactly where you left off, Alan, because it feels like that sort of mindset you carry through as you're running each run, the lessons you picked up along the way, as someone who's always run with runners who had far more experience than I ever had, I felt like I was just running in a group where Gene was also in it, and I was listening to these sporadic stories all packaged into a great book, and that was my first impression. Hearing the lessons you picked up from the runs, the through lines of a community, the through lines of picking up lessons on resilience and turning your health around through the sport of running. These are transferable, timeless stories and moments that you've done a great job of also transferring into the bigger world. And I find that the book being beautifully packaged chronologically is also a great plus. It's indexed in a way at the back where you also go through it, and if you read the index after finishing the book, you'll know what you're referring to. Here's a life lesson, and this is where it happened if you remember it. And you go back and you pick up on it. So it's a great package, I find, of knowledge. It's something that I could have on the side and pick up later and think of a story that reflects maybe something I just experienced. Well, I think Gene probably experienced it earlier too, so I can go back and read it and feel sort of seen in that manner. I like that a lot. In fact, one of the stories I liked the most was a story that of something I've never even come close to even thinking of accomplishing. That 6 marathon and 6 week story with Ken. I won't spoil it, but someone somehow gains weight after all of it, and it was one of the best cherries on top of a story. It's like reading about the Tour de France of running marathons. You finish a race, get back up and do another one. I loved it a lot. And I feel like throughout the running community, it's a book that's going to resonate with a lot of runners. It's going to offer resounding goals, things for us to look forward to doing and try to match up with Gene's accomplishments too. And also reminds us of our roots, because you go really well into how you start as a runner. You don't begin this book as a runner. You begin this book as an everyman, and you turn into a runner. So the poetry of the races you chose, the storytelling, the triathlons, the trails. I feel like if you run in any way, shape, or form, whether it's in a triathlon, a trail race, on the roads, there's something in there for you. And when someone chooses to be themselves, be vulnerable the way they are, to embrace themselves and to shine a light on themselves, well, that allows other people to shine a light on themselves too. It allows others to see themselves in you, and it actually grows them. So the light you shine on yourself just gives us more to shine on to. So I liked it. So whether, you're a Gene or you're a Dale or you're a Ken or anyone else, I feel like you'll see yourself in this book. And it's one of those books that I really hope everyone picks up one day.
Thank you both very much. That was way too kind, and appreciate being here today, Cheyenne. Thank you so much, Alan.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Running Book Reviews. A big thank you to Gene for providing review copies of the book and for spending his valuable time with us today. If you'd like to leave us feedback about how we can improve the podcast, or you want to suggest a book that you'd like us to review in a future episode, please leave us comments on social media. We are Running Book Reviews on Facebook and Instagram, and on Twitter or X we are reviews_running. Please also follow us on social media to find out about new episodes when they are released, or you can just subscribe to the podcast on your favorite streaming platform. We're on all the platforms. If you've been listening to us for a while and wondering how you can help us out, there are a couple of ways. If you're enjoying the podcast, spread the word. Tell your friends. Share a link to your favorite episode. Share a link to this episode. Do it now with a running partner who you think would get value out of it. Feel free to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We haven't really gone in hard on people to get reviews on Apple Podcast lists lately, so we could do with a few of those. Or you can rate us on Spotify out of 5 stars. We're also on a platform called Buy Me a Coffee if you'd like to look at little silly outtakes and snippets and stories and photographs. You can go to buymeacoffee.com, look for a creator called Running Book Reviews, and you can you'll probably get prompted to buy us a coffee, but you don't have to. You can access all the outtakes and snippets and info for free. That's all today from Running Book Reviews. Bye for now.
That's awesome.
Supposed to say bye.
Oh! I forgot.
Like Liz.
Bye! Do you want to add it in, or should we just leave
it like that?
Oh no! Bye guys. See ya!
And we're out.
Oh, I was so taken aback
That
by
was
your
awesome.
intro. That was awesome.
That was great. Actually, leave that in, Alan. You got to leave that in.
Oh,
I probably will. If Shan probably didn't listen to the actual recorded version of the last one we did together, but at the end he said, "Oh, did you notice? I said bye, just like Liz says bye, because I'm kind of programmed. It's Freudian." I said,
Right.
Yes, all of that was in at the end.
You left that in at the end of the episode. You left that in.
You're human. It humanizes it. You guys are awesome.